All right. Our numbers will be popping up. Good morning, or good afternoon, everybody. We're going to hold on here for a little bit while we allow time for people to register. You can tell that Arthur, Kevin, and I are all in different locations. So appropriately socially distancing.
Right. Sure.
You can tell your daughter, Arthur, that she's missing all the snow. It actually snowed last night.
Was that right? Well, she'll be back, and I believe in February there's still snow.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even that.
I mean, having lived in New York for many years, I do remember the winters went on, but
Absolutely.
so we have we have 3 ranches in Montana, and I've been out there. We've had snow in Montana in June, July, and August. So talk about a long winter. I mean, long winter.
I should ask you, do you by chance know Rob Ryan?
Say one more time.
Rob Ryan. He has a big ranch in Montana. He's a Cornellian, very famous entrepreneur also.
No.
I might want to introduce you.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. The name is familiar. Don't know where I've heard it, but the name is familiar. So that's great.
Absolutely.
Do you know where in Montana? It's a big state.
I can get his address. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I have it in my contacts.
Yeah. Well, if you send me his contacts, I'll drop him a note.
Okay. I will. I can introduce you easily. Oh, and Ross knows Rob also, so he can make that introduction too.
Good.
Okay, another couple minutes here. We're gonna let people sign in. Lots of folks in the chat already. Someone's already thanking you, Arthur, for your support of veterans, by the way.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Let me give it a couple more minutes and then we'll jump
Sure.
in. We had a record number of registrations, so it's going to take a little bit for people to sign in.
That's fine. It's good.
We're trying to figure out whether it was you they were coming to see or whether it was Kevin. We couldn't really figure it out.
Well, I'm sure it's the dean.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right.
Yeah. Well, the dean is the only one that's really dressed like a dean today. I'm kind of in my casual clothing today, so
I've been trying to get him to dress more like an entrepreneur, but it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
That is a hard sell.
Yeah.
I need to put a suit on today to see if it still fit.
You know, what's gonna happen is that when everybody goes back to their offices, they're so used to dressing, casually at home, they're gonna be dressing casually in the office. So you're gonna, a tie is gonna be like, what is that you have on? It's a tie. I haven't seen one of those in a year. I thought they were outdated, outmoded, or,
I think the bar will be changed. I think as long as people are wearing pants, it'll be okay.
Yeah, I know. I know. Somebody was telling me last night that they did they had, one of these Zoom calls, and they didn't have on pants. They had on a shirt, but for some reason, the camera was portrayed in a way or positioned in a way that they could actually see they didn't have pants on. So it was a little embarrassing. I'm sure that's happened more than once. So
it has, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's 12:05. I think we should probably start. We have a time schedule to keep to, so I'm going to jump right in and make some introductions up front, and then we can start right in with our webinar. So good afternoon, everybody. A lot of you know me, but a lot of you don't. I'm Zach Schulman. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I direct the Entrepreneurship at Cornell program, obviously at Cornell, and I also went to Cornell, 1987 undergrad and then 1990 law school. This monthly series is a partnership between the Cornell Entrepreneur Network and Entrepreneurship at Cornell, which is the office I run. You can learn more about both of these programs. We'll put the links in the chat so you can check them out if you're not already familiar. The goal of this webinar series is to bring together Cornell alumni, parents, and friends who are entrenched in entrepreneurship straight into your device, whether it be your computer or your phone, so that you can hear their stories, ask them questions, and of course, get inspired. In today's broadcast, we are very excited to talk with Arthur Blank. And to facilitate today's conversation, we have another special guest, Kevin Halleck, who is the Dean of the S.C. Johnson College of Business, as well as the Joseph R. Rich Professor of Economics and Human Resource Studies. And Kevin also happens to be the chair of the governing board for entrepreneurship at Cornell right now. I think I'm the only person at Cornell that has 12 deans on their board. I'm actually kind of proud of that. It's actually a lot of fun. So before we get started, a couple of quick housekeeping items. The format today is Q&A. We will have all the questions submitted in advance that you've already submitted in advance. We'll be taking some more questions live. Now, we did have a record number of registrants and participants today, so you'll have to be a little patient. Obviously, we can only ask a handful of the questions that come in. So chances are we're going to have to only get to a few. So just be patient with that. We are recording today's event. You can watch it after. We'll have it posted in a couple of different spots, both on the CEN website and the Entrepreneurship at Cornell website. We'll send out those links later on. So let's get started. I'm really honored now to welcome Kevin and Arthur to our stage. I'm going to sign off just for a little bit and I'll pop back in with some questions in about 25 or 30 minutes. Okay, thanks guys.
Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Zach. And kudos to you and your team for delivering such great entrepreneurship focused content and for asking me to join you today. I think I speak on everyone within the massive entrepreneurship community at Cornell when I say that we're beyond thrilled to be featuring Arthur Blank today. Arthur is first and foremost the parent of one of our current students, and he happens to be an extraordinary entrepreneur. In fact, on top of many of the awards and accolades that he's received, he's won over the years, Forbes has named him one of the world's 100 greatest living business minds. Why? Well, it might have to do with, in part, the fact that he co-founded the Home Depot, but clearly he's extended that initial success to a wide range of other activities, many of which I hope we'll get a chance to touch on today. He's also the owner of the NFL's Atlanta Falcons, who've qualified for the playoffs in 8 seasons since he took ownership, including a conference title and a Super Bowl appearance in 2016. Arthur, some people are chiming in online and mentioning other teams, so don't look down at the chat. He's also founded the Atlanta United FC, the soccer team, which took home the 2018 US Open Cup on their home turf in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in only their second season, after the league had been around for 23 years. In their second season, they won the championship. But these aren't his only businesses. This past September, he released his book, Good Company. Here it is, Good Company, which was recently named one of Barnes & Noble's top 5 best business books of 2020. I've read every word of this book. I think it's absolutely amazing. Arthur's focus on character and foundational principles is a roadmap for how leaders can build businesses that are good for shareholders and for society. I think it should be required reading for business students, business leaders, and anyone who cares about the future of the world. Arthur, thanks so much for taking some of your time to be with us today.
Kevin, thank you very much. I assume I can call you Kevin since everybody else has today, as opposed to Dean. So it's an honor for me to spend a few minutes with you guys and all these brilliant young minds at Cornell. So I appreciate the opportunity and the request, and we'll get started.
Okay. So I first want to ask you about the beginning of the Home Depot. So prior to founding the Home Depot, you were an executive of the leading home improvement chain, Handy Dan.
Yep.
After you left Handy Dan, what gave you the confidence to take a risk and form your own company in the same general area?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We, myself and my partner, Bernie, we left Home Depot in 1978. We actually both got fired in 1978, and that's another story. You have to read the book for that, but that's that's part of the story. But in any event, we knew, although we were running the most successful home improvement center company in the United States, we said that if we ever had to compete with a large down market, no frill store, big, great services, assortments, prices, service levels, that we really never could have done it. So there was nobody like that operating in the industry at that time. And we had, we both of us had a lot of opportunities in quote corporate America to do a variety of things. And we elected at that time, said, look, let's try to leapfrog the industry by 7 or 8 years and take this risk, if you will, and try to open up these giant stores that would be based on the precepts I just mentioned and see where we'd go. And we did in 79. But it did take us in 79, we lost half of our startup capital in the first 6 months we were in business. So it took staying power, which was important. But it also, for the first 2 years, we spent a lot of time listening to our customers and adjusting our product mix, adjusting our service levels, adjusting services offered, a variety of different things until we went public in September of 81. September of 81, obviously, 2 years later, we were highly effective, very successful, and decided then to expand the company, go public, and we went to South Florida initially.
Tough time in 81 with a recession.
Yes, great. The time was perfect. But reality is that one of the beautiful things about HD, and it's done it really during this pandemic as well, is that, people during difficult times, they stay in their homes and they'll fix up their homes because they want to go through family life cycles there, and the kids are growing up and they're changing, their needs are changing, the home needs are changing, et cetera. So they will, they'll stay in their homes and they'll fix them up. And obviously, if the economy's booming, they're moving on to the next home often. So, it's one of the beautiful things about that business model is that it's successful both in good times and in times that have some stress to them.
So I want to ask, I'm sorry, I want to ask a bit about values. And you talk about 6 foundational values: put people first, include everyone, lead by example, listen and respond, innovate continuously, and give back to others. I want to dig down on 2 of them, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One is you put a lot of importance on the well-being and satisfaction of your associates, including the diversity of their perspectives.
Yeah.
Can you expand on how this has contributed to the success of your companies? And then secondly, I would like you to dig down a little bit on innovate continuously. And
Sure. Let me start out with the first one. I would say without being really good listeners, and so you might say, well, go back to the comment I made earlier. What happened between 1979 and 81 during that 2-year period of time? During that two-year period of time, mostly what happened is that we spent a lot of time on the floors of our stores in Atlanta. We spent a lot of time talking to our customers, finding out what they liked and what they didn't like. I and my partner Bernie, we would stand at the exit, and people who left with something there, we would thank them, wave them, thank them, appreciate it. But the ones that left with nothing, we knew that something was wrong. They'd come for some reason. So we stopped them and asked them. We said, look, obviously you came here probably for a reason other than maybe just, browse. And they would tell us, you were out of stock on this, or you had the wrong supplier on this, or the person didn't have the product knowledge you needed to have, or the price was wrong, whatever it may have been. So we spent 2 years really listening to the customers and responding to the customers. And often I would say, and so would Bernie, that during that period of time, I said, the yellow brick road to success here is really just being a great listener, understanding the customers know better than we know actually what they need and what they're looking for. And if we don't filter and translate and put them into a different language, a different package, and layer them up with things that we think, just respond to what they're telling us, that we're going to be successful. And that's been one of the core reasons we've been successful, not only at Home Depot really, but all the existing businesses we have today. It's the notion of listening and responding and understanding the customers know the best. And then if you think of an inverted triangle, the customer's on the very top and I'm on the very bottom, let's say, but the next layer up is our frontline associates. And so we spend a lot of time talking to the people who are servicing directly the people, whether it be, guests in our ranches, or fans in our stadium, or customers in our PGA Tour superstores. We spend a lot of time talking to those frontline people because they often know also what the customers are telling them, what the fans are telling them, what the guests are telling them. So they can be clear communicators in terms of what we have to do to make adjustments in the business model.
I actually think there's a nice anecdote in the book when you've taken over the Atlanta Falcons, where you don't sit where the owner might typically sit. You went back and sat down with the players and asked them, what do they need?
Right.
And I
Well,
wonder
that,
if
that's a really good example, Kevin. I mean, when I bought the team in 2001, I was coming back from St. Louis, our last game. And it was before I purchased the team publicly, but the deal wasn't closed yet. So I went to the back of the plane. I just walked around, talked to players in groups of 3 and 4, and said to them, "Look, I'm your new owner. You don't want me on the field. You don't want me, running plays. You don't want me designing plays. You don't want me doing any of that. Tell me what I can do to help you as a team." And they simply said, our stadium is 40% empty. Of the other 60% that are in the building, half of them are rooting for the other team, the visiting team. So there's no home field advantage. So, we listened to that and we responded to that. We responded to that, in a very, very bold way. We had 24,000 season tickets that weren't being sold. We decided at that time that we were going to sell them at prices that were unheard of in 25 years, at $10 a ticket per game, $100 per season. We sold out 25,000 seats in the first 2 hours that we went public with that. And of course, it didn't make some of my co-owners happy, but the commissioner, Paul Tagliabue, at that time, I called him and said, "Paul, this is what we're doing." And I remember Paul saying to me, "Well, listen, it's your franchise and it's your choice. You can do whatever you want. I will tell you that some of your co-owners are not going to be thrilled with it." But, we had to do the right thing for our franchise, for our fans, and for the players. So that's an example of just listening, getting out of the way, and just responding. And over time, we've adjusted our pricing to where we're competitive today.
I think it's a good story, because I think most people might say, when you ask a player what do they want, they might talk about their pay, but these were just talking, this is.
Well, I mean, that's really been the strength, Kevin, I think, of all of our businesses. We constantly ask the people that we serve, what do they want? How do we do it better? And it relates to a lot of other things we can talk about later, but, being a really good listener, and being a listener is not just, hearing, but understanding, and then subordinating your personal feelings to what the people that you're serving are telling you is what their needs are.
So I'd like to switch to talk about society for a second. One of the imperatives in our college is to make an impact on business and society. Maybe that's why this book speaks so well to me. But in Good Company, in your book, you talk about how companies should elevate the communities in which they operate. What do you see as the role of business in bettering society?
Well, I think there's a continuous circle here, and it's a circle of providing everybody with a return on their connection to the business. So whether it be, let's take HD as an example, or take our PGA Tour Superstore as an example, whether it be the customers that we have in the stores, or where the stores are located, the communities that we're operating, instead it's being sensitive to not only the people that we're serving, who's serving them, customers, associates, but the communities as well. And I think it's very important to do that for a variety of reasons. I think to have that connection where the company feels and the associates feel that it's not just an organization that's only concerned about making the profitability, which is important in terms of sustainability over time, but it's one that's making a difference in people's lives in a whole variety of ways. So an example would be, this last summer, we had to close our 2 of our guest ranches in Montana that take guests, one publicly and one we use for nonprofits. We did that not because we couldn't create a safe atmosphere on the ranch property, but we knew that because 70% of our associates were coming from out of state, that the neighboring communities that were just, the border communities to Yellowstone National Park, we're going to get diseased as well. So these ranches have not been closed in 100 years. We closed them for the first time because we were thinking about the community. We invest a lot in those communities in terms of philanthropy and work and a whole variety of things, and conservation that we care deeply about. So we wanted to be true to that commitment that we're making to them. We said, we cannot operate these ranches here this summer and protect the communities. We can probably protect our associates and probably protect our guests, but they're going to go off property and they're going to bring disease with them. So that's what you're thinking about in a broader sense. And that made our associates feel very proud, which is important long-term. The associates, you want them to be not just proud of the product or service you're selling, but the organization and the culture. Example of that, the Business Roundtable, which I'm sure, Kevin, you're familiar with, 192 of the largest companies in American CEOs. For 50 years, they're 50 years old now. Their basic philosophy was that the job of a corporation is to give a return to the shareholders, period. That was it. Today, 2 years ago, one of my good friends happens to chair that group, Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan Chase. They've now anointed and adopted and supported the same philosophy that you have to be concerned about your associates, you got to be concerned about your communities, you got to be concerned about your suppliers, you got to be concerned about who you're serving, obviously your customers, fans, whatever they may be, guests. But you also have to be connected to everybody else. So that's a major change in the thinking. Now, it's easy to say it, but it's not easy to do it. And I think the doing is really where the, I don't want to say genius, but that's where I think the success comes in. Your ability to create that culture, to maintain that culture, to inject that culture into everybody and have them believe it. And most importantly, you don't have to recite it, they have to act it. And that's what's really critical.
There's another detail in the book about the fraction of current Home Depot associates who give to a care fund, which is remarkable. And I wonder about how you've encouraged your associates to give back to their communities. How has that encouraging volunteerism helped your companies? And as a signer of the Giving Pledge and someone who you've committed to giving, well beyond the Giving Pledge, frankly,
right,
by committing 95% of your wealth to your family foundation. What is the importance of giving back in your own personal life?
Well, I think it's critical, not only in my own life, I think it's critical in all of our lives. What we find today, and you probably find this at Cornell, I'm sure you find it at Cornell, that, the young people today are asking bigger questions. Why am I here? What is my purpose? Am I really happy or not happy? I think we may have chatted before about the happiness program, if you will, that they've started at Yale University, have it at Harvard, probably have a version of that now at Cornell. In case of Yale, a quarter of their student body signs up for that every year. So even though you have highly, successful, bright young men and women, they're asking, they're like, why am I here? So I think that today's young folks are pressing harder on what's my purpose beyond just, taking care of myself and my immediate family and my people in my circle of love, and giving back, that developing that other purpose of humanity, I think is very, very important for young folks today. And I think I say this often that, young people represent a third of the population in America. They represent 100% of our future. So what happens at places like Cornell is a beautiful thing. I mean, these young men and women are coming out of a great university like this, coming out inspired. They have the knowledge, they have the wherewithal, but most importantly, they develop a set of values and a set of concerns about the world they're living in, the communities they're living in, how they're engaged with their families and their broader families, not just their own families, but the broader family of the community that they're active in.
Related to that is hospitality. And I wonder if you could talk, as you know, we have the #1
right
school of hotel administration, #1 in the world in our college. And I wonder about how hospitality figures into your diverse businesses, and how do you get that customer service mindset into your associates?
Well, that's the core of our success. And I think that the element of the training and the leading by example and the execution of that is what really produces the unique set of results we have. So we use the Mercedes-Benz Stadium as an example, if I can. You might say, well, that's a big stadium. But basically, we have millions of people in there every year. It's all creating the hospitality. So we work hard at making sure that our associates understand this is a welcome home kind of philosophy, is that the building says Mercedes-Benz Stadium on it, but we want our associates who work in the building, close to 5,000 on game day, to think of it as their home. So how would you treat guests in your home? How would you make them feel? What kind of smiles would you have? What kind of hospitality would you extend to them? What kind of food and beverage would you offer them? What kind of security would you offer them? So, we've been ranked by the NFL and Major League Soccer, not by NFL, Major League Soccer, by the fans of both of those leagues. Despite this year having a COVID year, both in terms of performance for our football team and soccer team, we took a good year to have it, COVID. But in any event, we've been voted for the last 3 years since we've opened up the stadium that we control as the #1 in the NFL for fan experience, the number one in the NFL for food and beverage experience, the number one in the NFL for security, people feeling comfortable there, and the same thing with soccer. So, you know, you can create an atmosphere where people feel like this is their place, this is their home. They feel comfortable there, they feel secure there. The food and beverage is a great story in and of itself that we, you know, there's a second, when people go to a game, they want to win. For sure. And the NFL and Major League Soccer are both set up for parity. So you can't win every match, you can't win every game, but you try to. So the second thing they're looking for is they want good food and beverage. They want it at, you know, prices that are competitive. So what's happened for the history of arenas and stadiums in the United States and really throughout the world is that once you're inside, you're a captive audience. You're going to pay the prices that whatever they are, you're going to have to pay them. You're there by yourself, you're there with friends, you're there with children, family, whatever it may be. So we cut food and beverage prices by 50%. And initially the media said, well, that sounds good. You can do it for what, 3 games, 6 games? You pass the first season, you're not going to do it. And you'll definitely not do it during major events. So we have done that, and we've done it, you know, consistently for 3 years, 4 years now. Did it during the Super Bowl. We did it during national college championship games, et cetera. To the point we even got a letter from President Obama. The first game we opened up with that, we got a letter from President Obama. We happened to be playing on NBC that night. He was watching the game. It was against the Packers. We happened to win that game. And the president said, you know, I just want to thank you for thinking about, you know, everybody across America. And now we have probably 150 professional teams, colleges, stadiums, arenas across the country that have followed suit. So it's an example of leading by example and understanding what fans and customers are looking for and try to respect that. So there are so many examples of that, and it's not hard to find them. You just have to look for them and understand. As a result of that, our volume went up 120% the first year. And fans, they appreciate it. And across the league, they appreciate it. That's why we get the recognition that we do. So I think, you know, you think of hospitality in a broad sense, and certainly in our guest ranches where our guests come back at our one ranch open to the public, Mountain Sky, 96% of our guests return every year with no marketing budget. They sign up for the same cabin, same week, following year, put down a deposit, et cetera, because they've had an incredible experience. And that's all done with the associates that are there. They make everything come to life. They make the culture, the horseback riding, the hiking, it all come to life for them.
I like what you say in the book that 96% of it came back. So you ask the people in your team, why not? What's wrong with the other 4%?
Well, I do ask that, and that's, you know, it's sometimes, you know, I know what they're thinking. They're thinking, are you kidding me? But on the other hand, they do give me a serious answer. They say, well, you know, they had other plans for next summer, or usually it's something along those lines. But you know, I despite our success in all of our businesses, and our golf business was the #1 retailer in America, and we took that business over, by the way, 10 years ago, and the model was similar. We've changed it a fair amount, but the model was similar, but the company could not meet its payroll. Today, we're the #1 golf specialty retailer in the United States and really in the world as well with the model that we're following, and our comp store increases are 50, 60, 70% this year because of the pandemic in part, and because of the permanent changes we hope to see in the golf industry.
And there's a similar ethos that you have examples where a customer may come in to get fitted for some fancy golf clubs, but actually not be talked out of buying them, but be told maybe this isn't the right thing for you. It's sort of less revenue in the short run,
right?
But delights the customer for a lifetime.
Well, I think, you know, Kevin, you know, that's the crux of you look at the circle. It's a matter of developing trust. Once you develop trust with the associates, once you develop the trust with the people that you're serving, you develop trust in the communities, and you have to earn that trust. But once you earn it, there's a lot of things that you can do. So we do this often. Somebody comes in, and I won't pick on you, Kevin. I don't know if you play golf or not, but somebody comes in and they want to spend, you know, a lot of money on a brand new set that's the highest, this and that and other thing, but it doesn't match their game. So we will match the set of clubs to fit their game where it is. And that means that they may spend $500 less, $600 less, but you're developing that trust so the customer feels like, you know, these folks, they walk in my shoe steps, they understand, They're not trying to gouge me. They're trying to really be of service to me. So we're very thoughtful about that.
You can pick on me. Welcome to the club. Can I ask a question about the stadium? I think the stadium is a really interesting sort of case study of a business in and of itself, of course.
Yeah.
But I wonder if you could start that by telling us a little bit about your decision process and where the stadium was actually built. You know, you could have had, there are lots of options.
Yeah. Well, I think we were thinking, if we were thinking about where is the best place to put the stadium, save cost of construction, probably as much as $200 million, maybe more, maybe $300 million. We could have built it out in the suburbs, and people would drive, basically, because most NFL games are played on Sunday, although this week we're playing every day of the week, the record. In any event, we typically people come out, and for soccer matches, which are played either 1 or 2 days a week, they drive out as well. But we wanted to keep it downtown. We wanted to be in the heart of the city. We wanted to be down close to where, the city was growing and what have you, and also adjacent to the West Side. The West Side of Atlanta is the history of the civil rights movement in Atlanta. It's where Dr. King was born and raised, and where a number of the civil rights leaders were raised as well and met for many years. And so we've invested equally, in many ways in the West Side. When we announced where the stadium was, we said, look, it'll take us probably, construction-wise, probably 3.5 years to build it, after a year to get it designed and what have you. But the West Side, we're going to be committed to for 25 years. And we have to make major investments in helping, the generational issues that existed on the West Side. It went from 70,000 people in the 50s and 60s down to 6,000 people. And we've done that. The population is moving back up. The rate of crime is down by close to 50%. Public health is better. Schooling is better. A variety of things, all the metrics you typically look at. So that's part of being concerned about the entire community, not just about our stadium. It did cost us quite a bit more to build the stadium where it is, because we were building on a relatively small piece of property. But we knew the investment was worthwhile over the long haul, and it matched our values and supported what we were trying to do.
So I think I'm going to send it over to Zach for questions to get other people participating from the audience. So thanks so much. I'll be back in a little bit.
That's great.
Thank
Actually,
you,
Kevin, hey, Kevin, feel free to stay on if you want to make this more interactive. It's really
Okay.
up to you. I don't think the audience will mind. Arthur, thanks for all those insights. I have a whole bunch of questions, and I've tried to rank them just by ease of answering for a little bit. So I'm going to start at the top. When I look up at my other screen, you and the audience will know why I'm looking up. I always like to point that out. So let's start from the beginning. Did you ever think that you would become as successful as you are?
No.
When you were young?
Well, no, I knew we were going to be successful, but it was interesting. Many years later, after Bernie and I started the Home Depot, sometimes we would drive around together and go visit stores. Towards the end, we weren't doing that because we had to split up and visit, go our own separate ways in that way, but to cover as many stores as we could. But sometimes we drive around and give me a little elbow on the side and say, can you believe this? Can you believe what's going on? And the answer is no. But, I learned that actually from Sam Walton early on. I went to a conference when Sam was the founder of Walmart.
Yeah.
Sam was obviously alive then, and he was asked, well, how did you get to, from 10 billion to $20 billion? I don't even know what their numbers are today, probably $800 million, more higher than that probably. But in any event, Sam said, we just opened up one store at a time, et cetera. So that's really what our focus was. Our focus was to open up one store at a time, make sure that store was the very best store we could operate, do the best we could. That became not a blueprint, but became a benchmark to start from. And the next store, try to make it better than that.
Interesting.
During the height of our growth, we were opening up stores every day and a half.
That's crazy. So
Felt crazy.
yeah, I can imagine. It must have been like a fire hose.
Yeah.
Aimed at your head. So how did you and Bernie identify the need for this large scale home supply chain? And also, if you can also address, how did you find Bernie? I mean, and how did you know it was a good fit?
Well, Bernie and I worked together. The parent company of Handy Dan, which the Dean mentioned earlier, was a company called Dalen. And I was running a chain of drugstores for Dalen at that time. And Bernie was running a chain of not home improvement, a chain of discount stores. He was asked to run their home improvement division, which was Handy Dan. And then I actually was going to leave because the parent company was not doing well. We couldn't get funding for additional expansion. And I was a very young man and I didn't want to just be there and just to maintain the business for years. So, but I joined him in California, and that's where we spent our time together. That was the second part of the question. Zach, can you tell me?
Yeah. So the first part was how did you and Bernie, focus in on the fact that there was this need for the large scale store?
So we were running this very successful company, but the truth of the matter is that we knew that if we ever had to compete with this large, no frills down market store, low prices, great services, et cetera, that we could not have done it. So we said, if we really want to leapfrog the industry, and we're looking at, the ingredients in retail, which is space and inventory and people, those are the three ingredients that produce the output, revenue, sales, that if we overinvested in those areas, we could probably to maximize what our sales would be in the building. We didn't know what the sales would be. So we did a pretty exotic 5 and 10 year plan. The numbers didn't come out exactly right. I remember calling Bernie and I said, Bernie, look, we'd have to produce even higher volumes than what we expected. He said to me, he said, well, just change the numbers. What do you mean just change the numbers? He said, just change the numbers because we don't have any stores. I mean, we don't know what the volume is really going to be. And he was really right about that. So our sales per square foot right out of the box were, probably 3.5 times what everybody else was doing in the industry. When you can produce that kind of volume, and everything that we do in all of our businesses is always designed to how do you produce the maximum amount of revenue, the maximum amount of sales, the maximum amount, and do that in a way that speaks to the people that we're serving. So it's always, how do you make investments in anything that's going to move the needle in terms of the revenue, in terms of the sales that you're looking for.
Yep. I'm curious, did you do any what we call customer discovery back then? Like, did you actually talk to potential customers on the street and ask them if they would prefer to shop at a large store like Home Depot?
That's when we opened up the stores, the first floor in 79 and early 80. That's really all we did. I mean, we didn't, all we did, I mean, we used to describe it as our yellow brick road to success, if you will. It's like the Wizard of Oz. I mean, we would just follow the yellow brick road, but the yellow brick road wasn't our own brains. It was the customer's brains. It was understanding and being a good enough listener and being understanding the customer had the ultimate wisdom. They actually knew what they really wanted. If you really would just listen to it and try to, pull it out of them in ways, and people will tell you that. If they really think you have an interest in what they're saying, they're going to tell you, they're going to share it with you. And so we found our customers did that. Well, if you're really interested, yeah, this is wrong and this is wrong. And we love these other things, but these two things bothered us. So everything, that 4% that the dean mentioned, everything that they brought up to us that was not exactly what they were looking for, we would change. We wouldn't argue with one, wouldn't debate with them, et cetera. And if we heard that from our associates, we would do the same thing. Yeah. Our associates, we said, they're closest to the customers. So let's listen to what they're telling us because they're closest to the people that we're serving.
Yeah, that's really critical. I think you'll be happy to know that we really, really push customer discovery in all aspects of our entrepreneurship courses here. So the students are really getting it straight from the hose.
I mean, you don't even have to be really smart. You just have to be smart in the sense of having humility and understanding that you actually can learn more by listening to other people and just talking yourself.
Absolutely.
And, too often people like to hear themselves, which is okay, but it's most important if you're trying to discover, it's most important to ask the questions and listen to the response.
Yep, absolutely. So completely different direction. Here's one from a young student. What advice would you give an ILR student from the class of 22 who wants to be the general manager of a sports team? And just so you might know this already, but the ILR school at Cornell has produced many sports executives, and Kevin used to be the dean of ILR, so he could chime in on that.
Including 2 current commissioners, Rob Manfred and Gary Bettman, are graduates of Cornell School.
Well, yeah, well, they're both great guys doing wonderful jobs. Yeah.
So what advice would you give an aspiring student who wants to be a sports team manager?
Well, I think I think the same thing. I would say that you understand who you're serving, understand the fans you want in your facility, whatever it may be. Spend time understanding the players, understanding their mentality, understanding the coaches and the other administrative leaders, et cetera, general managers. General manager being, let's say, somebody who's picking out personnel and rosters and things of that nature. So it takes time to kind of work your way up and spend your time trying to understand what's good and what's not good and what they want to see. And if your trends are not going in the right direction, find out why. So an example would be when I bought the Atlanta Falcons. I mentioned these numbers before to Kevin. I had to figure out, well, why are 40% of the stadium empty? So I didn't ask the people that were already buying season tickets. I went out and asked in the marketplace in a variety of ways, personally, on the street, but in a variety of ways using research, et cetera. Why aren't you coming? Tell me what you need. So they would say, well, they told us, you really want to know? Yeah, really would do want to know. Beside winning every game, which is that's not available in the NFL, including the Pittsburgh Steelers who lost last night.
Right.
So, but in any event, generally is not, that's normally not. But outside of that, they say, well, we want our prices to be low. We want this, we want that. The food and beverage was an issue. At that time, we couldn't control it. It wasn't our facility. In our own stadium, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, we can't control it. We fixed that. But so we just spent time in talking to them, and it wasn't like 600 things. There were like 6 things. They wanted better parking. They wanted lower ticket prices. So to solve the better parking, when I bought the team, I was told there's no more parking available. Myself and one of our associates took one afternoon, and we walked every parking lot within a half a mile of the stadium. So all it took was an afternoon. One afternoon, I doubled the amount of parking that we had available for our fans. But it just took me getting on the ground and walking with somebody else and actually going to these parking lots. And, how would you like to have a contractual relationship with landlord? Oh, we'd love that. It'd be great. We'd love to have that steady stream of income. So, it's just a matter of being a good listener and I love consultants and what have you, but, I think ultimately you can find out the answers you're looking for if you ask the right questions. And if you really have humility, true humility and understanding that the people that you're serving really know best in terms of what they want and what they're looking for. And your associates are the second best to know.
Yep. So I'm going to stay with the stadium for just another question. And by the way, I'm a huge soccer fan as opposed to a football fan, although I guess it depends what country you're in, but definitely a soccer fan. So when you started or when you thought about getting the expansion team for Atlanta, can you tell us a little bit about that process? And were you motivated by economics in terms of wanting to better monetize the stadium, or was it some other factor?
I think that was part of it. We knew what we were good at. We were good at taking care of people in a building and a facility, and so we knew that. And we knew that soccer. My middle son had played a lot of soccer. He was the captain of the soccer team at Elon. Sorry, I didn't go to Cornell, but he was at Elon. Experience there. But in any event, so my family was engaged with the business itself, and I spent a lot of time, watching him and others at matches, et cetera. And the club soccer element in Atlanta was really very, very strong.
Right.
When we went out and we hired, and this is a good message for our young folks who are listening. We hired the most expensive CEO and the most competent CEO we could find in the world of soccer. We hired a young man named Darren Eales, who had played in the United States. He was from England. He had played for Brown University, holds a lot of the records in Ivy League for scoring and what have you. But, we made an investment early, brought him in 2.5 years before the first match, which traditionally is never done. Usually it's like 6 months before you hire your staff and you all kind of run at the last minute. We brought him in that much earlier so he could take this time and study the world of soccer in Atlanta or the Southeast, what worked, what didn't work, understand MLS, understand the salary cap, understand the feeding system, because soccer is, as you know, and probably most of our listeners know, is a world, it is a world game. So we designed, the facility. The facility itself was designed for soccer. Cost us a fair amount of money to do that. So when every soccer fan was in the building, they never felt like this was an NFL stadium that was converted for soccer.
Right.
Sight lines were adjusted, the seats pulled back, et cetera. So it meets all the FIFA requirements. And when the games are hosted in the United States, North America, I should say, in 2026, there's a reasonable chance that we're going to be, we pretty much know we'll be one of the clubs that'll be able to host it. And the result of that was that we had an outstanding team. We understood. We started out with our supporter clubs, which fans, which are unbelievable. And we broke every record in the history of Major League Soccer that went back 25 years, not by a little bit, but by 40%. I mean, the numbers we were averaging 55, 60,000 a game on average were unheard of in Major League Soccer. In fact, when they had the last World Cup in Russia, CNN, they had 2 opening matches in Russia played, and we had 1 in Atlanta being played in MLS that day. We outdrew in Atlanta, Georgia. We had more people at that 1 match in Atlanta for a Major League Soccer match than they had at 2 different matches playing in Russia in the World Cup. CNN's headline was "The world of soccer is in Atlanta, Georgia." So, I mean, it was, it's a great tribute, not to me. It's a great tribute to, his name is Darren Eales, to the people he put together. But we made the investment. We never thought of investing in him as operating expense, but as part of the capital expense. It was part of, if you want to maximize the best experience we can, you get somebody who's the most knowledgeable, who's the best leader, give him some time, give him the resources, and allow him to do his thing and support him. And that's what we've done.
That's fabulous. I look forward to seeing a game there sometime. I have not been down yet, but I will certainly get down.
You have to make sure you do that next season.
I will. Here's an interesting question. How is the Home Depot addressing diversity issues on its board and its executive team? And then coupled with that, what have you learned from your work on the NFL Diversity Committee?
Well, I speak more closely to what the NFL has done. And I would say this, it was interesting. It was an article that came out today. And we're, as many of our listeners probably know, we're in the search for a new general manager and a new head coach for our football team. Because we've had this COVID year with our Atlanta Falcons, if you will. So I think, the NFL in many areas has great diversity, but in some of the cases, in head coaches and general managers, we've not seen the kind of success that we would like to see. And that's just not in the NFL, but it's also compared to other leagues, which have a lot of the same issues. So I think we have to be more intentional. We have to develop deeper pipelines. We have to understand what we're interviewing and all the rules the road is set up. It's called the Rooney Rule, but it's been expanded many times over. Art Rooney was the founder of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and his son is the current owner, principal owner of the Steelers. But I've served on a diversity committee with his father, Dan Rooney, who's since passed away. And I know the desire is there, the passion's there, et cetera, but there's more work to be done. And it has to be more personal accountability. It has to be more understanding. If we're not making the kind of progress, why are we not making the progress? My personal belief is that I think you'll see this year, with the amount of openings that we'll have, I think you'll see more emphasis on it. The question is looking at a diverse set of candidates and not having a quota system, but a diverse set of candidates that are all qualified, not a handful that are qualified, but all qualified. And then, being colorblind and picking somebody who's best suited to do the job. And I think the league will do a little better job in that than we've done in the past. The passion has been there, desire has been there, but we haven't always gotten the results. I think we'll see more results going forward. That's true in soccer too.
Absolutely. Could you turn that conversation a bit toward corporate America? We've all been reading a lot about diversity requirements on boards.
I'll give you an example of another one of our businesses that is kind of a corporate America, which is our PGA Tour Superstores. This year, we just made the largest grant ever to the First Tee. The First Tee is an organization that serves probably close to 1.5 million young men and women a year, half of which are of color, all of which are between 9 and 14 years old initially, and then they go on from there. So we've now developed a training program in conjunction with the First Tee. We're actually going to train 260 of these young, bright men and women, and then we're going to put them through an internship program. The ones that succeed and come out, as role models, if you will. We're bringing them to one of our ranches this summer as well for an expanded, and then we'll have some scholarships available for them as well, bringing them both inside the company and actually promoting them in terms of their college experience. So, I think you have to be more intentional about it. You have to be more intentional about it and hold people really accountable for seeing the kind of diversity we'd like to see. It represents the best of America.
Yeah, it's really, really important. So we know that the stadium is the first certified LEED Platinum stadium.
Yep.
talk a little bit about sustainability in the Home Depot. How does the Home Depot address that, given its incredibly large footprint?
Yeah. Well, in the case of HD, I'm sure they've expanded a great deal since I've been there, which is 21 years ago. But it's when we initially started that effort in terms of sustainable wood products, and we were the first major retailer really in the world to insist on those products being harvested in ways that were compatible with the environment and sustainability. We were able to do that because of the size of the company. So we got many distributors and manufacturers to work with us much more closely on that. Home Depot has continued to take that to the next level, and they have a sustainability officer that does great work in that area. And it goes back to our stadium. We had no reason to build a stadium that was platinum certified. The first time in the world, really, a stadium had gotten platinum certification. But we felt it was the right thing, for the right reasons, and wanted to set an example for our associates and for other people who are involved in stadiums and facilities, that you could do that at reasonable cost and have a building that would be proud of in terms of what was not only going on in the building, but how it was built and how it's being maintained.
Yep.
And we have that today, so it's beautiful.
That's fantastic. Here's an interesting question. I hope you don't mind it. It
No.
says, what is the worst decision you've ever made, and how did you remedy it?
It may have come from my daughter.
No, it didn't.
The worst decision I've ever made and how did I remedy it? Well, I think there's been, I don't know if there's a worse decision. I think just generally in life, I would say this, whether it's personally or business wise, when you make, and part of being a risk taker goes back to the question I think Kevin asked earlier. When you're a risk taker and you're investing as an entrepreneur, you're going to try a lot of different things, and you have to assume you're going to do that, you're going to have a degree of failure. That kind of comes with the territory. But I think too often I see people in business, they make a commitment to do a certain thing a certain way, and they're committed that way or entrenched in that way. No matter what, they're going to continue doing that. They're not really good listeners. They're not really responding to that. So I think that the notion of, take the path, walk down it. As soon as you realize you've made a mistake, turn around and walk back out and go in a different direction. I mean, I think at some point, you can make mid-course changes, and we've done that throughout the case of Home Depot, and certainly in all of our other businesses, our PGA Tour superstores and other things, our guest ranches. We've continued to make corrections, if you will, things we've learned from people that we're serving.
Zach, can I jump in with one?
Absolutely.
So Arthur, you've talked, your 6 guiding principles obviously are a thread across all of the industries and all of the businesses
Right.
that you've led. And so they're a consistent similarity across the businesses. I wonder if there's some differences that you recognized that you had to confront when you entered a new market or new industry.
Yeah, I think there are, but I would start out by first saying and reminding everybody that, the culture, which is at the basis of everything we do. And if you went to a Home Depot shareholders meeting, they would have an inverted triangle up on top, and they would have the circle of values. And this is 42 years later, they would have the same things on the board when they start their shareholders meeting. So I would say that, I'm sorry, I lost track, Kevin. Tell me.
I'm trying to think of different.
Oh yeah, I got you. Yeah. So I think what my point was this, is that whatever the business is, whatever the industry is, these core values, they transmit from business to business, and there's success in all these businesses. That's a beautiful thing, regardless of the industry, topography, demographics, time of the year, et cetera. However, what's on top of that does change. So the business could change, ranches to a golf store to a Mercedes-Benz Stadium, et cetera. But there are different components. So for instance, in the NFL and Major League Soccer both, you have a risk of injury, which I never had at Home Depot, and we don't have in our golf business particularly. So you have to figure out, how do you, what kind of depth do you have to have in different positions to make sure that your team can still play competitively. So it means, like in the NFL, if you don't have a backup quarterback, the case of Denver Broncos a few weeks ago, they had
no quarterback.
They had no quarterback. They played with no quarterback. They took Some young man who was a wide receiver off the practice squad. If you watch the game this week, was sitting up in the stands. He was their quarterback playing an NFL game. But ordinarily, you want to have, good backup plans. So for quarterback, you can go on and play. And during COVID this year, it's a little tricky. So the injury factor is one thing I think that makes a big difference. I'm just trying to think what else. Injuries, and I think in the NFL and Major League Soccer, which you don't have this in corporate America, that the business is designed for a sense of parity. So the way the rules are set up in the NFL with the draft, the worst team drafts first, et cetera, salary cap is evenly distributed throughout the league. 85% of the revenue is distributed throughout all clubs. So there's a lot of things to create, parity in the NFL. So where fans feel, as they go into July and August of next year and on to this football season, their team has a chance to compete. So I think that's important. When we were, running Home Depot, we weren't concerned about, whether Lowe's was doing well or not. The better that we did and the worse that they did, the happier we were. Not for them personally, but just as a business. So I think that's different as well. So you're in two sports leagues that are designed for promoting competition, promoting parity, and it's up to you to find ways to unseat that. And you can do it because there's no salary cap on coaching, better decisions by general managers. There's no salary cap on facilities. There's no salary cap on a lot of things that you can create. And in my opinion, I treat our players every year like they're a free agent, even though they're not. They have contracts. I treat them like they're free agents so that when they become free agents, they think about, why would I ever want to leave this? The best place to be, ownership, management, facilities, everything is first class. I'm going to try to stay here. So, and that helps you when you're negotiating with a free agent.
Well, thank you, Arthur. And I have to say that I think that your continued focus on those foundational principles is, as I said earlier, is a roadmap for how we should be building businesses that are good for shareholders, but also for society, just consistent with the way the Business Roundtable is turning. So I want to thank you for sharing your time and your perspectives with us. Your time is valuable, and we're grateful that you spend a bit of it with us today. I really enjoyed it. I expect our hundreds and hundreds of listeners did too. You've shown us how business can do well by doing good. And I think that's important.
I appreciate that. And I also take 1 second, even though I'm not being asked the question, we're talking about, the lack of COVID on your campuses, and it's a great credit to the university and all the leadership there and the students who have made wise decisions and made responsible decisions. And to have a university like Cornell, where you're producing these, really brilliant young men and women that care about the right things for the right reasons, it's something that you all should be very proud of. And I know, Kevin, you are, and Zach, you are as well. And all students that are listening, my tip my hat to you and all the great things that you're doing and you will be doing in our future.
I think you're for those of you who haven't read the book yet, your appreciation and grateful message rings true even here. I think you're right that our president, our provost were out in front. We had capacity to test 50,000 people a week, and our students and our staff and faculty came together. It really is a great story, and we're looking forward to the safe return of our students in February when they come back to campus. So I want to thank you again for your values-driven leadership and for the time you spent with us. And I want to thank everyone else who's called in for being here and spending some time with us. So
thank you.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Zach, and thank you all the students and the administrative staff in your offices that helped make this possible. It's been an honor for me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Arthur, it's great to get to know you briefly over the past hour. For those of you that are about to sign off, I just want to do a quick reminder that these are monthly webinars. We're actually going to take January off, and we'll kick it back beginning of February. We'll be featuring one of the Wayfair founders, who happens to be a Cornellian. Steve Conine is going to be interviewing his head of supply chain. Her name is Fiona Tan. So it'll be a really interesting webinar in February. And of course, all of our webinars are available online a short time after the event, either on the CEN website or the Entrepreneurship at Cornell YouTube channel. So until then, keep making great things, dream big, and have a wonderful holiday.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye-bye.